Well, over his almost 30-year NASCAR Cup career, my next guest nared 84 wins and 3 Cup titles. After hanging up his helmet, he helped launch NASCAR on Fox's TV coverage, where his signature Boogity-Boogity-Boogity, let's go racing, guys, became an
Amen.
iconic phrase. I am truly pleased to have NASCAR Hall of Famer Darrell Waltrip join me here in the wind tunnel. Darrell, before we get into really the meat of this interview, how in the heck did you ever come up with the term boogity, boogity, boogity?
Well, you mentioned 84 wins. How many of those wins were you there for? You were there for quite a few of them.
Well, I was blessed. Yeah.
Yeah, when we were with Junior and Floss, that was a special time, and in both our lives, I think it was for me anyway, Stevie and I.
Me
But
too. Yeah.
yeah, so David Hill, my boss, David Hill, he's
Yes.
president of Fox Sports West for years, and he's from Australia, and he's kind of a nutcase, and so I hate it when they say, and the green flag is in the air, and they race off into turn one. I thought, what the hell is that all about? I mean, they've obviously never been behind the wheel of one of these 700 horsepower cars, charging down into turn one with holding your breath, hoping that it sticks. Because if it sticks, it's probably going to be okay. But anyways, I'm telling David Hill one day, I said, man, got to be a better way to start these races. We need some excitement. Get excited. He said, well, you're a smart guy. You come up with something. And so I was in the motorhome, and I was listening to XM radio, channel 58, and the song Ray Stevens came on, and it was called The Streak. And
That's
Ray
right.
was singing, he said, here they come, boogity boogity. And there they go, boogity boogity. I said, that's it. That's it. That's what we got to have. That's what we need. So I go to the television booth, and I tell Mike Joy and Larry McReynolds, I said, I'm going to get ready to start the race. And I told Mike, I said, I got this. He said, what do you mean you got? I said, let me handle this. I got this. So they're coming off turn 4, green flag. I said, boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys. And dead silent. I mean, Mike looked at me and Larry looked at me like, have you lost your freaking mind? What is wrong with you? What are you doing? I said, well, that's the way I think we should start this race. I said, I think that's exciting. It's fun. And look, like I do, if it's not exciting, if it's not fun, and it has to be a little bit informative when you're doing TV or radio or a podcast. You gotta have some information, but you gotta have a good time doing it. And so many times I see these analysts, they look like they're in pain, look like they're in agony, pain and agony and defeat. So anyway, that was how I started that race. And David Hill came to me after the race. He said, I loved it. We'll do it every week. And so we did it every week until I quit.
I don't want to say you quit.
But let me tell you one thing real quick. So Ray Stevens is a good friend of mine. So Ray calls Ed Silva, who's my attorney.
Right.
And he's Ray's attorney. And Ray said, I'm suing DW. And Ed said, for what? He said, he stole my phrase. He stole my boogity boogity. I'm suing him. And of course, it was a big joke. He was kidding. He was not mad about it. He was kind of flattered that I took it to that level. And but we had a good time with it. Ed called me and said, Ray's suing you. You know that, don't you? And I thought, oh my God, Ray Stevens is suing me. But we got it resolved, and it's all good now.
Look, your entire career is all good now. It piloted you or catapulted you into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. But I want to reflect back on your career. And look, it had so many iterations. I remember distinctly when you showed up with the terminal transport car, and then you get in the dream ride with Dygaard, and then of course our time together with Junior and Flossie, as you said, and then off to Hendrick. So you've got probably the best perspective of then and now, Darrell, and I'm talking about just what you've learned. But I wonder, over that almost 30 years, what was the defining moment in your career?
Well, certainly going to drive for Junior, that was a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
I was driving for Dygaard, driving the Gatorade car, and I'd won 29 races and lost the championship to Richard Petty in '79. And so, and I assumed that's probably where I'd be for a long time. But then Cale came to me, and Cale's one of my best friends now. Wasn't necessarily then, but now. And Kale came to me and he put his arm around me and he said, DW, I'm going to tell you something I ain't told nobody else. He said, I'm leaving Junior at the end of the year. Well, this is 1980. I said, Kale, you got to be out of your mind. What are you thinking? I'm tired of running all the races. I don't want to run all the races anymore. I just want to run a limited schedule. I'm going to go drive for MC Anderson. And here's what I wanted to tell you. Junior Johnson loves you. And Junior Johnson would love to have you drive that 11 car. Well, I was so excited that just for a moment, I forgot I just signed a new 3-year deal with Dyegard to drive their car for 3 more years. So
Whoops.
I said, oh my God, now what do I do? So that was the dilemma. That was the situation I was in 1980. I had to figure out a way to get out of that contract, which was pretty hard to do with Dyegard because Bill Gardner he prided himself as being the smartest guy in the room most of the time. And so, but I figured out a way and look, these are numbers. So I'm not making this up. It cost me $300,000 to get out of that contract. It cost me $100,000 for each year. And I paid 100, Junior paid 100, and Pepsi paid 100 to get me out of that contract. And that's how I got in an 11 car. But it was touch and go. I mean, Bruce Jenner, of all people, was friends with Bill Gardner, and Gardner was threatening to set me in the grandstand and put Jenner in the car, and we had quite a go of it back and forth. But in the end, he got what he wanted, and I got what I wanted. And here's the great thing about it. So Ricky Rudd ended up driving the car. So we're in Charlotte, and Gardner says, "Look, you be here Monday morning at 8:00 with $300,000, or we got no deal." Well, this is Friday. When the hell am I going to get $300,000? It's Friday afternoon. So I go up to Owensboro and I talk to my father-in-law, and he loans me the 100. I talked to Junior, he got his 100. He talked to Pepsi, they got their 100. So I think Gardner thought he had me. He figured I couldn't get that $300,000 raised up by Monday morning, 8:00, but I did. And so I go in and I make a deal, and we sign the release. And he said, "By the way, you owe me $25,000 more." I said, whoa. That's not our deal. He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Are you in the Bud Shootout?" I said, "I am." He said, "You're probably going to win it, and I want my half of the money."
Huh.
So I had $325,000, and I walked, and I walked out. Ricky Rudd was sitting in the outside waiting for his turn to go in, and I walked by him. I said, "Good luck, buddy. You're going to need it," because those guys in there, they're pretty ruthless. But anyway, Gardner and I we bumped heads a lot, but I learned, something, Jackie, every time I did something, whether it was with Dyegard, Bill Gardner, Junior, Rick Hendrick, even driving for myself, I learned something every time that I never realized before. Things about the sport that, when you're a car owner and a driver, you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get to sit in on all the car owner meetings, and you get to sit in all the driver meetings. And so you see a different perspective of the sport when you've had that kind of experience. I'm life experiences. I mean, I lived it. Not like I make it up. I never drove just for one team. I drove for a lot of teams and a lot of characters, Bud Moore, just different people. And I learned something from every one of them. And a lot of people say, "Well, how come you never used it?" I guess there might be that, but anyway, I feel like I've been blessed. I've had a great career, 2 great careers, driving and in TV. And funny thing, Jack, a lot of people don't know I ever drove.
Yeah, you're right.
A lot of people in the world today think all I've ever done is said, "Boogity, boogity, boogity, let's go racing, boys," and do TV. That's all they've ever known. And so sometimes when I bring up my driving career, they say, "Oh, you drove? Wow, how did you do?" I did pretty good.
Darrell, I got chills because you and I were fortunate to intersect and really have an intense number of years with the Duke crew, and so much that we both learned from Junior and Flossie, in many respects outside of the race car. It was one thing for them to deliver to you what you'd sought for so long, and that was that elusive Cup championship, and then to back it up the way you did over your career at JJA. But it's the life lessons that we learned from two individuals that were probably as real as anybody in the world could ever be. What was the best lesson you learned there in Ingle Holler, sitting around Junior Johnson's breakfast table?
Pretty easy. Junior said, "You do the driving, I'll do the talking." I was pretty notorious for voicing my opinion. It didn't matter what it was, and I'm a contrarian. I think I'm a lot like you. I think you're a contrarian to some degree.
Absolutely.
And so I had an opinion about everything, and I didn't mind letting people know what my opinion was. But that was the best thing Junior ever told me. He told me that right on the front end. He said, "You got a bad reputation for running your mouth. All I want you to do is drive that car. You do your job, I'll do mine, and everything will be fine." And look, when you sit down and when you would look at Junior Johnson, or you would talk to Junior Johnson, you'd say, "Junior Johnson, I mean, how can he be so smart?" But his racing mentality, I don't know about anything else. I just know about his racing mentality, was off the chart. We would go to Detroit together, and we would sit down with the Chevrolet engineers or the Buick engineer, whoever they were. And Junior would start explaining something that he wanted to accomplish with a motor. Most of the time it was engine related. And those engineers would look at him like, "Where did you come up with this idea from?" But Junior was he's just a country boy, and he had lived, you talk about life experiences. I mean, Junior Johnson has a whole book about, last American hero of life experiences. Yeah. So I always thought that I learned the most from him about how to handle NASCAR, handle a race car, and be a champion. When I started driving, I was 12 years old. I'm in Owensboro, Kentucky. I'm driving a go-kart, and I'm pretty damn good. And if you don't believe me, just ask me, because that was the way it was. So I won a lot of go-kart races. And then my dad and I built a hobby car, and it was a little 36 Chevy, and had number 6 on the side, and had Wild Child on the quarter panel. And that was my first race car. And I'll tell you this, and I've told it before, but so we go to the racetrack the very first time with this car, and all I'd ever driven is a go-kart. So this is an experience for me, and it's a dirt track, and it's Ellis Speedway, and they'd water the track down. It's real muddy, and we got there early so I could get some practice laps. So I get in the car, and I have a football helmet. I don't have a helmet. I have a football helmet. I got on my football helmet. I get in the car. I come out. You pit outside, so you had to drive into the track. So I come off over the fourth turn out onto the front straightaway, and it's muddy. I mean, gosh almighty, I can barely keep this thing going straight. And in my mind, I think, well, it's because I'm not going fast enough. I just need to go faster. So I gas her up a little bit, and then getting it down the first turn and get her all crossed up and sideways. And then I stand on, I head down the back straightaway, and I'm heading into the third turn way over my head because I have no idea what I'm doing. And I get there and I turn that thing. You got to turn right to go left, by the way. Don't forget that. So I turn that thing to the right, and I stand in that gas, and that thing's coming through that corner. And about that time, it digs in, and bam, straight into the pit wall. Never even made a whole lap. Never made a whole lap the first time I went to the track. Buckled up, the wheel was up on top of the motor, and the car was just, tore it all to hell. And my dad was livid because we've been working on that thing all winter long, and here we are.
Of course,
we're not even going to get to race this weekend. So it took me about a month before I finally figured it out. But once I figured it out, I won all the races. There were one year in Owensboro, there were 22 races, and I won 17 of them.
Wow.
And people all the time say, well, how come you left Owensboro? I said, because they asked me to. They wanted me to. They said, out of here.
Hey, Darrell, when you look back, as you just alluded to, you spent your entire life in the world of motorsports, and then you dropped the mic, figuratively and literally, and walked out of the booth. Do you miss it?
Say again.
I said, do
I
you
didn't hear you.
miss it, Darrell?
Oh yeah. No,
The world, the
when
world and the family of motorsports.
yeah. Here's what happened. So we're at Sonoma, and Eric Shanks is my boss because Hill's retired and Shanks is a boss, and we're talking. Shanks and I are talking, and and there's just a lot of things I didn't agree with,
Mm.
and we'd have Sunday morning meetings with NASCAR, and it would end up in an argument because they wanted to do something that I thought was totally ridiculous, and I would tell them, and it became a excuse me, it became a bumping of heads. They didn't agree with me, and I didn't agree with them. It was like the 550 horsepower package, the 750 horsepower, blah, 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 all this crap they were doing, you know? And so Shanks and I are talking, and Shanks says, well, how much longer do you want to do this? I said, I'm going to tell you what, I think I'm going to quit right now. I think I'm done. I said, I can't put up with this crap every week. It drives me crazy. And so I thought at the time it was the right thing to do. And I left and I came back. I told Stevie, I said, I'm retired. I'm not going to go back next year. And she was shocked. And then COVID came along, and it seemed like everything worked out for a purpose. I retired. COVID came along. They were doing races in the studio from Charlotte. They weren't going to the track. I would be terrible at that. I got to feel it, smell it, touch it, hear it. And they weren't getting to do that. They were doing all the races from the studio in Charlotte. And so I thought that was, in some way, I thought that was a sign that I'd made a good decision. But then they started back going to the track. And that's when and you know this, because you've lived it your whole life. It's the people.
Yeah.
It's not the event. Everybody, oh, we got to have a great event. No, you don't. You got to have great people. If you're around great people, you'll have a great event. And so I missed Mike Joy, and I never thought I'd say that. And I missed Larry McReynolds, and then Jeff Gordon came along, and here Jeff and I, excuse me, I didn't know Jeff that well. I covered him, in the booth, but I didn't know him personally. And so he comes along, and they're behind closed doors. They're saying, "Now help this guy because, he's the future of the sport, and teach him everything he needs to know, and go easy on him." And so I think I took that I took that too far. Instead of me standing my ground, me being who I was, the analyst that I was, and the things that I knew, I kind of let him be the star of the show. And his star got brighter, and my star got dimmer. And that was another part of it. I've always liked Jeff. He's one of my best friends now, but it was just hard for me to stand in a booth and not be the star of the show. And that may sound, I hope it doesn't sound obnoxious, but that's just how it was.
Oh no, I understand, because listen,
you know what
again,
it's like.
And
so
you said it earlier, Darrell. I think in a lot of ways our affinity one for the other was because I think we're cut from the same swath of cloth. That certainly got me sideways through my broadcasting career, standing up, and I know what those feelings are like.
Yeah, well, it was like I had second thoughts.
Yeah.
And I even talked to Shanks about any chance you need somebody, I'm available. If you ever need need a backup, I'm still around. But anyway, that ship sailed, and I'm pretty happy doing what I'm doing now. I have 3 grandchildren, 2 little girls and a grandson, and we have a lake house and a boat, and and Stevie and I were happy as we've ever been. We've been married 52 years. And that's a lot of years when you've been in racing as long as we have. So when I look at the whole package, the total package, I can't complain. I'm pretty happy with the decisions I've made and the things I've done.
Well, listen, without saying, this has been a special time for me. I appreciate your joining me here inside the wind tunnel. But more importantly, I appreciate the fact that God gave us the opportunity to get to know each other And whether we speak regularly or we don't, that union or that feeling burns bright. And I wish you, Stevie, the redhead man. I mean, she's the reason you're still around. Believe me.
That's
I
right.
wish all of you the very, very best, and you take care. And thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, just remember, Jack. Here's one thing you got to remember: you can't make old friends.
No, you're right. You're right. Thanks, Darrell.
Bye, buddy. Love you.
Love you too.